Perfect. Well, again, I'm super excited to be here. I'm coming virtually from the sometimes sunny state of Ohio, and today is one of the sunny days, so it's a good day. But super excited to share a little bit about myself and my company called Clear Vision and what we're trying to do. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is to help create equitable experiences for everyone through technology, innovation, and community. So before we jump in and talk about some of the things that I've been working on, I want to start with some of the reasoning behind why I decided to make the shift from the marketing, tech, and design space into digital accessibility outside of being a person with a disability. So very early on, I started to explore and learn about digital accessibility. And with that, I discovered some surprising statistics and facts that really helped make that decision for me. So I learned that 26% or roughly 26% of people live with a disability at any given time. Depending on where you're at in the world, that percentage could be higher. It really just depends on what's considered a disability in that part of the world. I also learned that roughly 90% of websites are not readily accessible and do not meet the web content accessibility standards. I'm sure we've all heard of the AI and how much that's taken the world by storm and everything to do with Web3, but accessibility really hasn't been a part of that, increasing that gap between technology and people. And then lastly, there's an extreme lack of communication happening between organizations and their customers or their clients with disabilities. In most cases, if I or someone with a disability encounters an inaccessible experience online, we're just going to go somewhere else. We're not really going to communicate with the organization. And even if we do, in most cases, nothing really comes about it from what I've seen and what I've heard from talking to other people. So all of these factors kind of led to piecing together what it is that I'm now trying to do in the digital accessibility space. So the current initiatives, there's really mainly 4 of them. The first one is accessibility assessment tools. So helping organizations to figure out where their team's skill sets and knowledge lie, and then come up with action plans on how to upskill their team to add accessibility to the different roles and responsibilities across the organization, rather than building and designating an accessibility department within the organization. Second, community apps, resources, and tools, working on things for people like myself to make our own online experiences more readily accessible and help find those resources to do so. Third, accessibility events. So putting together and building events and experiences to help people who are feeling a little bit overwhelmed or intimidated by the conversation of accessibility, make that first step, have that first conversation to be able to step into that space and have a safe environment to explore and ask questions and experience what it's like sitting on the other side of the table. And then lastly, education and training. So building and designing tailored education sessions and training sessions for people within the different departments of the organization to bring their skill sets up to bake in and build in accessibility to their everyday roles and responsibilities. So to get to this point, May 2023, I've done quite a lot. Some of the highlights include piloting those assessment tools with the Harkins Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement, a research project through I-Corps under the National Science Foundation, partnered with the University of Akron, collaborating with the Blind Institute of Technology and Mike Hess to build and design training and education curricula, partnering with 2 marketing agencies in Northeast Ohio. And year to date, since I really started this, I've gotten the opportunity to work with and talk to and train more than 100 people in the space of digital accessibility, from documents to mobile apps to web apps to websites, social media, creating accessible podcasts, all different kinds of stuff in all different departments all across the world. It's been an absolute blast to meet all of these people and to talk about digital accessibility with all of them, from IT teams in Beijing, China, to product teams in New Zealand, here in the US, Australia. It's been fascinating to see how digital accessibility spans around the world and how it looks different in those different areas. So diving a little bit deeper into those first 2 points, the assessment pilot with the Harkins Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement. So we sent out the assessment, got 29 responses back on the assessment with feedback on how to improve and optimize and make them more effective from a quality, a structure, and evaluation standpoint. And then after all of that was done, we took it back in, split the assessment into 2 different ones, one general accessibility, one digital accessibility, and completely shifted platforms, reworked the entire way that the assessments were delivered, collected, and analyzed to where it's now almost fully automated outside of sitting down with the organization to analyze and interpret those results to create a roadmap. The second one, the iCore research project under the National Science Foundation. So with that project, I went out and interviewed 21 people within the disability community, local service providers, and supporting family members and community members to really understand how they're finding resources, how they're evaluating and assessing how effective those resources are, and ultimately what types of factors lead to making the decision whether to keep that resource or to try to find something else based on their experiences, their personal preferences, and other characteristics. So I really have tried to bridge that gap and sort of sit as that centerpiece between the organizations and the people that the organizations are servicing or providing products to. So why is this all important? Why am I trying to do these 4 main different things? Well, the biggest one is that there's very unclear guidance and rules and regulations on what organization needs to be compliant or conformant to what standards, who it applies to. It's kind of ambiguous, and it's extremely hard for organizations to really know where to start and what their end goals should be. Secondly, technology is accelerating. We've had ChatGPT, we have AI generating images off of text prompts, and accessibility is not really in that conversation. And I think it should be. Web3, everything with cryptocurrency and everything like that. Accessibility wasn't really in that conversation, but they're still posing questions of how do we onboard our next million customers? And then lastly, longstanding stigmas and stereotypes around accessibility, that it costs too much, it takes a super long time, you need to allocate a bunch of resources and energy towards it, and then persons with disabilities and kind of the common ones that come with that as well. So with that come the 4 initiatives, and the main 2 groups that we're trying to really focus in on are organizations that are looking to create and maintain equitable experiences, but don't currently have the resources, the specialized personnel, or a roadmap with goals to achieve that. And then secondly, persons with disabilities that are looking to become key players in driving change towards a more inclusive and accessible future. This is extremely true in the Gen Z millennial sort of demographics because of the whole we, not me mentality. Everybody wants to get involved and drive change in some way, shape, or form. So when it comes to competition, who are we competing with? What organizations are we sort of keeping an eye on? I don't really consider any of these to be direct competitors. I really look at the accessibility space as one that is driving change for the better, and the pond is plenty big enough for all of us to swim in. So while DQ and Funka, Level Access, WebAIM, all of these companies provide accessibility resources, education, certifications. But the problem that I have with some of them is it's all online self-based, and it's generally going to be pretty broad. Some of it does dive into specific topics and specific job titles and positions, but from a standpoint of talking to people and really understanding how other people are trying to learn, it's not really a sufficient way to understand and then put into practice accessibility in the everyday work environment. So we're just trying to change that with instructor-led, not online self-paced courses where you're getting to talk to a real person living in that community and ask questions. And it's a very safe, comfortable, open environment to explore and expand those skill sets. So the two main initiatives within the business model that we're focusing on right now are the accessibility assessments, which are a product as a service based on the number of participants, whether it's 5, 10, 50, 100. And at this point, it is, again, fully automatic and automated outside of sitting down with the organization to analyze the results and create that roadmap. And then secondly, with the education and training, it's a fee for service based on the number of participants and the number of sessions. It could be a 2-hour lunch and learn. It could be 2 hours a week over 4, 8, 12, 14 weeks, depending on what that organization needs, who's in the room, and how many people are in that room. And this is offered both in-person and digital plus hybrid options as well. So I am Clear Vision. So quick little backstory with the time that I have left. Clear Vision started as a clothing and apparel company. As it gained traction, people started asking me how I was getting followers on social media, how I got my website with e-commerce built and stood up. So I started helping businesses with their online marketing. And then in 2021, I made the shift into digital accessibility after spending nearly a year researching and exploring the space, trying to figure out what it was that I could bring to the table. So it's now in its third iteration. It's just me at this point. I'm definitely looking to grow and expand out the team and reach a lot bigger of an audience to make and drive a bigger impact. My intro kind of covered the bottom 3 points here. 6 years in the digital marketing space, 3+ years in the accessibility space, 16 years lived with a disability. But I do hold the IAAP CPAC certification. So I am one of 6,000 professionals with that certification. And then I do have a bachelor's in business marketing and arts from Walsh University here in Northeast Ohio. And my last point that I want to wrap up with is one of the things that I'm doing to make that entry point or that first step into accessibility easier for everyone. And that's why the social icons are listed there, as I'm producing content on my website across all of these different social platforms, talking about accessibility and trying to create that introduction so that people have a starting point and it's not so overwhelming or complicated trying to figure out what resources to trust and which ones are good, which ones are relevant and up to date. I'm trying to produce content to make that journey a little bit easier to start. So that is the conclusion of my pitch. I super appreciate everyone who joined and let me talk and share for a few minutes. And I definitely look forward to what the future holds.